This is Andy Crouch from All About Beer. I wanted to take a moment to thank Dust Bowl Brewing for becoming our latest underwriter. With a spirit born decades ago in Oklahoma, the Central California brewery started with Hops of Wrath IPA and grew into an award-winning regional brewery with 4 locations. The folks at Dust Bowl appreciate the importance of supporting beer journalism, and their financial support helps us pay our writers, illustrators, and photographers. Learn how you can affordably support journalists by visiting allaboutbeer.com/support.
Welcome to Drink Beer, Think Beer, the podcast that gets to the bottom of every pint. I'm John Hall. May is mild month, and we're getting wild with the style as we bring you this panel from Little Beer 6, the great festival hosted by Good Word Brewing. Blake Tyers of Creature Comforts interviews a panel of brewers who know a thing or two about the beloved English ale. But first, you often hear Andy at the cold open of the shows. I've been talking about this for a long time. The way we're able to keep bringing original content to the beer industry and to curious beer drinkers is through your support. We've created an affordable underwriting program that is easy on your budget, helps you get visibility, and is an altruistic way to directly fund writers, photographers, and editors. Please visit allaboutbeer.com/support to learn more and to sign up. When you're at the website, poke around, read some of the recent articles, go through our archives, and tune into other podcasts like One Iconic Beer, Brew to Brewer, and the All About Beer podcast. You won't be disappointed. And you can follow us on social media at All About Beer to keep up with everything else we have going on. So this is usually the part of the show where I give you a little introduction of what's to come. But Blake Tyers of Creature Comforts, who's moderating this panel, did such an outstanding job that I'm just going to let him take it away.
Welcome, everyone. I'm Blake Tyers. I'm co-founder and senior director of Curiosity at Creature Comforts in Athens, Georgia. And yes, that's actually my title, which should give you something about the kind of conversation we're about to have. Before we get into it, I just want to set the table a little. Mild is one of the oldest continuous beer styles in the English-speaking world. It was the working class pint, the beer that fueled industrial England, pulled from cask and corner pubs, consumed in volume by people who needed something honest, drinkable, and affordable at the end of a long shift. At its peak in the early 20th century, mild accounted for the majority of beer sold in Britain. It wasn't a specialty. It wasn't a conversation piece. It was just beer. And then almost disappeared entirely. Post-World War II grain rationing, the lager revolution, the rise of bitter. By the 1980s, mild had been reduced to a footnote. CAMRA waged a decades-long campaign just to keep it on life support. So, why are we here, on a stage or in the grass, at Little Beer Festival in 2026, treating it like it matters? Because I'd argue the market is quietly telling us something. We're in a moment defined by low and no alcohol growth, a consumer exhaustion with extreme beers, and real hunger for what I'd call intentionally simplicity. Beers that reward attention rather than demand tolerance. Mild, a style built on nuance at low ABV, is almost perfectly positioned for this cultural moment. Whether the industry is ready to actually embrace that is another question, and that's what we're here to explore today. Joining me on the panel are some of the most thoughtful professionals driving success in this space right now. Kyle Bergen is co-founder and head of business operations at Wayward Lane Brewing, a farm brewery in New York's, I should have figured out how to say this first, Schoharie Valley? Schoharie. There we go. Thank you.
Very New York.
He plays a central role in the day-to-day operations of the business, overseeing finances, sales, distribution, events, and taproom operations, along with leading much of the brewery's ongoing maintenance and build-out. With a background in machining and process-driven work, he brings a systems-oriented approach to running the business, focusing on efficiency, execution, and consistency across all areas of the brewery. At Wayward Lane, he has helped build a destination brewery model centered around high-quality beer across a wide range of styles. His work sits at the intersection of product, service, and marketing, ensuring that what's brewed connects with how it's experienced and ultimately how it sells. Alex Leonard, head brewer at Eno River Brewing. After starting his career in St. Louis at Four Hands Brewing Company, Alex moved to North Carolina to take on the role of lead experimental brewer at Trophy Brewing Company. While there, he had the opportunity to work with many unique ingredients, brew lots of different styles, and then learn from many talented and creative folks. Now at Eno River Brewing in Hillsborough, North Carolina, which was opened in 2023, they focus on brewing sessionable, flavorful, true-to-style beers that highlight local ingredients and agriculture to make beers that taste like here. And lastly, but not leastly, we've got Zach Porter. He's marketing, sales, and a brand professional in the craft beer industry with nearly a decade of experience growing breweries, building brands, and developing industry relationships. He's worked with Trillium Brewing and Schilling Beer Company, and now serves as the director of marketing at Mass Landing Brewing Company in Maine. While passionate about great beer, Zach is most inspired by the people and community behind it, fueling his travels to festivals and events across the country and beyond, where he connects with others in the industry. Based on the coast of Maine, Zach enjoys spending time with his family, traveling, and exploring local beer scenes wherever he goes. Gentlemen, thank you for joining me. Now let's get into it.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
So, Alex, Zach, Kyle, just kind of getting into it so we get to know you each a little bit better and your relationship to this panel. Can we just go down the line here and maybe tell us a little bit about your connection to mild, what it means to you? I imagine that a lot of us, if you're passionate about mild, you might have some specific experience or memory that kind of connects you to it, that drives you. So anything you want to speak in that matter would be great to know what your relationship's all about with mild.
Yeah, Alex here. My relationship with mild really started when we began Eno River Brewing as a project. This was a brewery that was opened in 2023, so it's much more new to the scene and kind of where craft drinkers have been going the last few years as far as looking at like sessionability, knowing what you're getting out of a pint, kind of where we've seen consumers stepping away from bombastic ingredients, high ABVs, and weird things that they don't really understand when they're trying to pull a beer off the shelf. And honestly, our mild came from a conversation with some friends of mine at BKS Artisan Ales, which are here at Little Beer today, and their mild ale, Rock Hill and Locust. And I remember sitting there in my hometown of Kansas City, where they're based out of, drinking beers with them and just like really loving that beer so much, and thinking about the things that we were going to be producing, as our brewery was being built, as we were commissioning equipment, and really wanting to have a beer like that, and just thinking like, gosh, how do you get away with making this style in today's day and age? And Brian Rooney, their owner, said, well, you just make them. And that was kind of good enough for me. So that's honestly why we even call our mild is Inner Conflict is the name of the brand, to kind of represent that that dichotomy between what I feel like some hypercraft drinkers are looking for versus what we want to produce, and hopefully we can all meet in the middle somewhere on that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you. Kyle?
Hell yeah. So mild was something that we experimented a lot on the early stages of Wayward Lane, and was the very first beer that we ever brewed on our brew house, and it was one of the 3 beers that we ever put out, and it was kind of one of those styles that we were the most kind of stoked about, even though there wasn't like a big draw for it. And we've always been of the mindset of like producing beers that are very low ABV, sessionable, easy to drink, because honestly that is what us as owners, brewers, like we love to drink. So it's something that we've done since day one, and as much as it was maybe a hard sell, like something that we've just like tried to continue doing and like continue to perfect. Our mild is called habitude, essentially meaning like a habitual act, something that you want to keep revisiting, something you want to just like keep getting back to. And it's been one of my favorite styles that we've done since opening. Yeah.
I love that. Thank you. Zach,
nice.
Tell us about what mild means to you, man.
Thanks, Blake. Mild for me dates back to about 2016. And I took a job living in Brighton, England, right on the south coast. And we used to leave work at about 2 in the afternoon to go hit the pub and dive into some beer. So that was my first exposure. And at that time, I didn't really know enough about beer. It was just kind of something I enjoyed doing and something I enjoyed to connect with people on. One thing about the mild or any kind of England kind of session ale is it kind of falls in the background of conversation when you're sitting with friends at the table. And when you have that pub culture and that atmosphere, it's just something special about it that kind of always stuck with me. So during my time at Schilling, we brewed our collab with Creature Comforts, and that was one of my favorite beers. And I headed over to Leeds to we were pouring at Northern Monks Festival, Hop City, and I want to say it was like your great aunt or your grandmother. Somebody was living over there, and we had to make the pilgrimage to deliver those beers over, and we never made the trek. But
yeah, she was oddly not that interested.
Yeah, no,
like, come on, we're bringing beer from America.
She's like, Schilling, what is that?
It's like, I got errands, honey.
But for us at Mass Landing over in Maine now, this our dark mild's 4%, and it's called Weatherproof, and we do this probably a couple times a year.
Yeah.
But I see it as a style that's just increasingly getting more and more popular, and I think we're going to dive into it a bit more. But for me, I think it's one of those breakthrough styles where you can really sit at a table for hours and have a real conversation and let it kind of meld into the background a bit.
Yeah,
which is what I really like.
A common theme that all you guys are talking about, and something that I really enjoy, is that there's certain beers that really focus on bringing people together. To your point, where it does become the center point, but it's kind of the background and the facilitator. And I think that's what English beers do so well of, and I think also German lagers do a great job of that as well. It feels like we've all grabbed onto lagers as an industry, maybe as enthusiasts. People are on that, but the English beers are still kind of a little behind, and I think they're set to come for some more. So related to that, Kyle, we'll come to you. And this will come to everybody, but do you feel like mild is a style or is it a philosophy? And does that distinction matter?
Interesting question. Philosophy. Yeah, I mean, I feel like that you do have the diehards. We do a lot of casks of all of our English beers, and there are specific people that are diehards that really feel like that's what they're coming to the brewery for. They want to come. They want to drink the mild that's on the cask. We do obviously have it on draft as well, but yeah, I think it's a little bit more of a philosophy for some.
Yeah. Zach, what do you think?
I actually think that mild is right now in craft beer, I think it's a bit of a movement. I see people like Forest in Maine and people who really own in on it and almost kind of create something that is more sought out. Like go to these breweries, do kind of the mild trail, or I forget if it's mild as wild. I forget what they call it.
March mildness.
Yes.
Machine House.
Then the Machine House,
Yeah, I think they started that up, and now everybody's jumping on board, which is great.
Yeah.
Thank you, Alex. Yeah, so I think it actually is shifting along with lager and sessionable beer in the industry and the culture right now, and really becoming kind of a movement in beer.
Yeah. How about you, Alex?
To piggyback off of what Zach was saying, I think we saw this big shift, and we finally had the year of lager, in like 2020, 2021, when, we'd heard craft brewers calling for craft lager is going to be so cool now for probably the last decade, but, with the constraints of production and the timeline on making really good lager beer, it kind of took the shutdowns that happened around COVID for folks to have tank time to go ahead and lager your beers to make the kinds of, traditional European styles that I think folks were sort of hearkening for, at least within the industry. And then, the time over the next couple years to get, drinkers, consumers, guests excited about those styles too. And I feel like the craft beer consumer is much more pliant these days to producer-led trends, as long as they are looking towards something that's understandable. So this isn't me trying to say anything negative about people who are making like smoothie sours or like pastry stouts. Like those are really difficult products to make. Those are a lot of crazy flavors to try and balance, and they definitely take a lot of technical skill to do. But what I've noticed in our market is that the craft beer consumer is less risk averse these days. Like they're still interested in spending money on craft beer. They still want to support businesses in their community, but they want to know, they want to understand the beer when they're buying it. They want to know what they're getting inside of that can or inside of that pint. And a return to traditional styles, I think, has been really helpful for folks. That's a thing that we focus on a lot at our space. We're, for context, a taproom brewery, so we're like 400 barrels a year, mostly out of our tap room. And we're kind of focused on, as Zach said, the styles that blend into the background that allow for conversation, that allow for connection. They're not beers to be talked about, they're beers to be talked over. And I think mild fills that role. And also to Zach's point, you're talking about like great producers like Machine House, like Hogshead, like Forest and Maine, that have been making traditional beers for a long time. And I think we can look at the last few years of March Mildness, in the like Philly, Jersey area. People are excited about it. People are traveling, 50 miles at a time to stamp a passport book to drink mild. So I think this is another opportunity for like the styles that we as producers are excited about to get them in the hands of our guests.
Yeah, I agree. And that kind of leads me to something I really kind of felt was like a good meat and potatoes of what we could talk about today. Like there's a tension here. There's data supporting the notion that the U.S. consumer is looking for more moderate alcohol consumption. But we even see that, I think, a little bit with the rise of like Guinness is definitely having a moment. And it makes, Guinness being served on nitro is certainly emulating the cask experience. And that's that origin story. So the mild is primed to be perfect there. So with that mild being style largely unknown and one that doesn't sound very sexy, how does your brewery approach, Zach, to closing that gap, and what success have you seen that could transpose beyond your tap room? Like how do you get someone that's brand new to understanding this beer, but you can tell, like when you talk to that consumer, this is exactly what you're looking for. You don't know it yet, but let me tell you about this thing called mild. How are you guys doing that?
Yeah, that's a good one, Blake. And this comes down to, I think, a couple of things. One for me would be beer education, and the second is just marketing and how you kind of relay, your brewery's passion about what you're brewing and why you're brewing it. I think for me, more as like a marketing and salesperson, one of the biggest points of connection you can have with a consumer is your own passion and what you enjoy. So just relaying the message of the beer culture, like I've experienced this, I really loved it, I think it's something you'll enjoy. It almost sends like a preconceived notion of being a good beer, something that this person enjoys so much, I may enjoy it too. But I think for us in the States, it's a culture thing. I think it's more pushing the envelope on, hey, let's all go to a bar or kind of replicate some of that pub culture and put our phones away and speak to each other and have real connection, like Alex said. I think that's incredibly important. I think actually as technology advances and we kind of get in this new generation of AI and everything else, I actually think the culture is going to shift more towards the opposite and people wanting more connection or time with each other because of those things being so relevant in everyday life. And I think beer follows that trend too. I think people will be drawn more towards the culture of drinking together and doing that as a social aspect, which obviously mild complements perfectly. So like marketing it in that way of being something that you can connect on, and also just being a cool beer. Like, yeah. Hey, we make these beers. We love these beers. They've been around for years for a reason, and they're really, really good, and they're also really awesome. Let's market them that way, and let's put them out that way.
Yeah. Alex, what do you guys do at Eno to talk about like how are you connecting? Like you guys sell, I think, quite a bit. You were saying it's your number 2 sellers mild. Is that right?
Oh no, not at all.
Oh no. Well, how are you guys crossing that bridge in your tasting room?
So, again, we are mostly a tap room, so 95% of what we sell is all on site, and I love mild. And I want everybody else to love mild. So one of the things we have the privilege of doing is we do a really heavy education with our staff, and we empower them to make connections with the guests as they come in. I'm a big believer in like the Will Guidara, Danny Meyer style of thinking about how hospitality should run, where you should be creating experiences for people. And really focused on your guest experience. Will, if you're listening to this, I'm excited to see you in Philly.
I think we all are.
Yeah, right? Yeah. So that's a big thing that we focus on is empowering our staff to take the time to make connections, to give them as much information as we possibly can, but not in like a didactic manner, but just like, hey, here's something that I hope you understand, and encourage them to translate that through their own experience. So we do a decent amount of like sensory with our staff on beers. We encourage them to drink beer in moderation. So they understand how a brand changes over its lifetime while it's on draft, and know how it's tasting to them and how their palate can change on a daily basis. So our staff is really our number one salesperson that gets to communicate directly with our guests. That said, mild didn't take off very well the first couple of years.
Oh yeah,
and we do a couple traditional pour styles. I've been a big believer in nitro beer, so we've always had like a nitro handle on. That's typically like a pub ale or something, or like a dry stout, something that's like really familiar to guests. But mild really started to take off this past year when we bought a bunch of like half-liter mugs, mostly just for Oktoberfest. We figured like, hey, like, again, small brewery, small tap room, no storage space for glassware at all. So we're like Willy Beckers across the board for everything. But once we started getting some like Tubringer half-liter mugs, people really wanted to drink out of those. And so we only offer like traditional English styles, normal lagers in those styles. So if you want a big boy glass, you're going to have to drink an old person beer. And that's how you get that cool mug. Yeah. And I will tell you, we doubled sales of those styles like almost overnight. Since then, we've added a cask engine. So we try to keep casks in rotation. We've started to try and add some like side pull, like Lucre faucets, to do some like, European style pours with some of our lagers. But that like wow factor of a non-standard glass, a non-standard beer faucet seems to really activate our guests in a way where they like, oh, I want to know what's in that. Sure. I want that glass. How do I get that? So yeah, it's strange how much that has like augmented the taproom experience of just like, I wish we could have more glassware.
Yeah. Well, don't we all?
Yeah.
How about you, Kyle?
I definitely resonate with that because we also are a very small tap room, restricted on glassware, but same thing with the presentation of like, especially on the cask engine, like people see that and they're like, hey, what is that? Like, that's beautiful. Like, I want to get that, and like having it kind of forefront and people see it, they ask questions about it, and like similar to like training the staff and making sure they know like how to present it to the customer. And I think that's probably like the most important part, but I think both these guys hit on most of the other points for sure.
All right, well, I'll come back to you for another one right here. It seems that in the U.S., like mild has largely been represented by post-World War II iteration of the style and also dark. Why do you think we've landed here in this one corner of the vast mild universe? And have you guys explored that in your brewing operations of brewing other iterations other than the dark mild? Or I get the gist from everyone that we're all dark mild people, right? Which is kind of a niche in that lane. So, what do you think? Have you guys explored other versions of milds, the pale side, the stronger side that may have existed before World War II? Have you considered that?
Yeah. We've done a pale mild and what was the other style? I think there was we call it, I think it just kind of happened because we had a lower attenuating habitude of our English dark mild that was like, well, call it a tiny tude, and it's, like you just kind of have to pivot in that realm of like, well, we still gotta sell this. And we have kind of experimented with that, and we always just kind of still gravitate towards the like English dark mild, but yes, please. But I think maybe these other guys could probably talk on that a little bit more as we drink mild here.
Zach, can you multitask?
Yeah.
Zach's pouring up milds for the panel.
It's for you, Alex.
You got to
Thank you.
Hey, cheers, boys.
Cheers.
I need a beer.
Something in your glass here, buddy.
Give me going. Give me some tude. Full tude.
Now let's proper cheers.
Yeah, cheers.
Cheers, guys.
Thank you. Mild bringing us together.
What was your question? Sorry.
So, the landscape of mild, have you guys explored other versions other than the dark? Have you considered like pre-World War II? I've seen like 6% milds. Is that something that you guys have explored, and or if not, like why do you think dark mild is really where we've settled or you've settled?
Yeah, it's a good question, man. I personally haven't. I was, from my time between Trillium and Mast and even like Schilling, it was more like continental European style, so we didn't dive into that besides when we kind of hung out with you guys, which is really cool. But I think with the rise of lager and even some of the stuff that Alex touched on, from like Lucre to cask engines, like, and the marketing behind these products, I don't think there's been enough behind mild and the diversity in that style to really get the American craft beer industry to kind of be making more of those. I think it's like, as an English style, you look at, I kind of look at dark mild and then obviously pale, and or something like, you know, Landlord, like Timothy Taylor's or Sonoma, and I crush those from Track Brewing all the time with Steph. But I think as these become more popular and we look to making more beers, I think we're going to see some of those come out of the woodworks a little bit more.
Yeah, for sure. I've certainly have had several beers where we've tried to make inspired by Sonoma over the years. Never as good as Sonoma. It's kind of like one of those brewers' Terrace Bulba beers where we've all made a riff and it's never been as good.
Top 3 beer for me.
So hats off to them.
Shout out, Steph.
Yeah. Alex, have you guys explored other versions of the mild, or have you stayed in the dark lane? And where do you think the potential lies in opening that landscape?
Yeah, I guess kind of echoing Zach there. We've stayed mostly with dark mild because I feel like the American craft beer drinker still likes big flavor. And even if it's like normal beer flavors, they still want, I feel like, a certain intensity of flavor. So we've stuck with dark mild, and that's the reason I love to brew it, is because you can have, you know, a 3% beer that tastes like a 6% beer, that has like nuance of flavor, that has drinkability going on in it. And if I was going to straight to the pale side of that, I feel like I would probably just call that like a bitter, or if I was smarter, I'd call it a pub ale, because people don't want to drink a beer that's named bitter. I think folks are still salty about the IBU wars, 20-ish years ago. So we haven't messed around with like mild as a non-hoppy pale small beer too much. We tend to call that English pale ale or pub ale, just because I feel like the thing that I've noticed is, BJCP can categorize something however it needs to be. You can move an international pills to an American pills to a Czech pills. You can call it whatever category you want. But I think at the end of the day, you need the beer to be something that's familiar to your guests and your consumers. So, if you want to call it a Czech lager or a pivo Tmave, you can call it that, but like a Pilsner is much more understandable to an American craft beer drinker on the whole, because that's a beer that they know and understand, whether or not it's a Helles, which that's a whole other thing. We've had to kill a couple Helles brands because like nobody ever ordered it, because they didn't know what a Helles was, but everybody knew a Pilsner. But that's a whole other panel talk, I think.
Yeah, it's interesting. It feels like the curiosity of the American drinker goes in waves, where we have sometimes people are very adventurous, and you see an adventurous marketplace where people want to try the new thing or explore old beer styles, and if people make that's great. And other times it feels like it gets very reductive in the sense that like, I only want to drink what's safe and what I know. And it's interesting to see how we move through those cycles, and I feel like we're kind of in a tighter cycle right now where people are maybe a little less exploratory. And it's hard to say if it's ABV driven or not. Zach, do you think there's a strong correlation, or how do we get people to say, put those two things together? I want to have less alcohol in my life, but I also still feel like that same consumer is saying, when I spend money, I want bang for my buck and I want more ABV. How do we find resolution in that conflict?
Yeah, I think Alex made a great point about small beers being very flavorful. And one of my takeaways from really working at Schilling was making low Plato, low ABV beers and having them packed with flavor and really having those malt flavors shine, which is what I think Dark Mild does. The thing with getting more bang for your buck, I actually don't think that relates to ABV. I know traditionally, and even being at Trillium, I was in the haze craze during the peak time with lines down the road for, your 10% triple IPA, whatever it might be. But I think as generations are getting more health conscious and having a little more social awareness of the craft beer environment and just drinking culture in general, that these styles will appeal more without having the higher ABV. The flavors will speak for themselves. I think the processes and presentation speaks. Like both Kyle and Alex have both said, having the cask engine, like making something just appealing and kind of cool and kind of putting that passion behind it. It's like we've seen that trend continue with Lukr faucets and Czech. I mean, Czech beer is having an incredible movement in the industry. But I think as we see these English styles grow, and Todd is probably the number one advocate for all of this, having the CAS programs, presenting it the right way, educating your guest on what you're doing, having them see the way you pour, the glass that you put it into, it all plays a role in the experience. And I think we're going to see more of that, especially out of these breweries that really take pride in how they present and what they're delivering in their products.
Alex, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think we've, depending on what data set you're looking at through who's putting it out, we're seeing like expenditure on alcohol and like hospitality seems to be kind of flat for the last few years, but we're seeing less frequency, but we're seeing higher spends on the times that folks are going out. So, if we're applying that data, that macro data to like our industry as a whole, which I don't love, we're seeing that people still want to have a good time, like you're saying. People still want to spend and treat themselves. Maybe they're going out less often, but they're doing it bigger when they do. But, as Zach was saying, I don't think it's necessarily tied to ABV. I think I can count on, one or two hands the times in a week we get people who come in and ask us for the highest ABV thing we have on draft. But people are looking at flavor, I think. And especially as the craft beer drinker continues to age a little bit. As I continue to age. Let's be honest. We got, not just me. I'm the only one getting older.
Yep.
Yeah, I think, the majority of beers on tap for us at any given point in time are under 5%. And we don't really see stagnancy in any of those low ABV brands. I think it just depends on if we call it an IPA or a Pilsner. Those are the things that sell the majority of it. But folks want to drink good beer, and I think we're very fortunate that craft beer is at a really mature space where people aren't counting IBUs or ABV anymore. They're starting to really find the stuff that resonates with them.
Yeah, should we just call these sessionable low hop black IPAs and then we can sell them?
Done.
That would do the movement for sure.
There you go, Blake. You're hired.
Oh, man.
Kyle, how do you find people see that correlation with ABV and price in your tasting room? And do you feel like people are willing to look beyond that and enjoy the experience?
I 100% do. I think, we're in a very small countryside area where people are not as familiar with craft beer in general. They're looking for the macro brands. That's all they really know. So I think we were lucky enough to kind of introduce a lot of people to any of these certain styles that we were putting out there. I think as the craft beer industry progresses, there is a lot less of the higher ABV, drive and to piggyback on yourself. It's just the flavor profile and the way it's brewed and just looking for good beer, just overall.
Can I ask Kyle a question?
Yeah, go for it.
So you guys are, you're not in the middle of a giant metropolitan area.
Yep.
I'm guessing a lot of your guests are driving themselves to and from your space.
Very destination driven, or locals that are, once again, they're just not, the craft beer scene is not very prevalent where we are. Yeah.
And so because of that, do you feel like, or Yeah. Do you feel like low ABV styles resonate with people because of that? They can have the experience. They can have 3 beers instead of 2, or are the guests that are coming into your space still kind of looking, for the most part, for those like traditional craft beers of like high ABV Pilsner and IPA?
Yeah, I think it's evolved since we've been around. People are coming to know us that we have the very low ABV beers, and they kind of want to be having a full day on the farm of just drinking those nonstop. But it's been an evolution of just introducing people to what good craft beer is in that area. Yeah,
that's cool. Just kind of a quick one, just going down the line, starting with you, Alex. Kind of curious how. Zach, you already kind of mentioned yours, but you can still chime in. How often are you having a mild available in your tasting room? It's kind of multi-step. How often are you doing a mild? How are you serving it? What format? And then, do you have other beers that line up in that English cask history if mild's not available? So just kind of curious about how much space this takes up in your business mind. Not like you, but your business's idea and personality.
Yeah, sure. So we're a 7-barrel brew house. Excuse me, I had to burp. So we're a 7-barrel brew house, and we brew very seasonally. So we have crazy amounts of fruit beer from spring into summer. We do hoppy stuff year round, but we tend to go into the darker maltier space when we get into fall and winter and transition into spring. North Carolina, it gets hot weirdly early, but then still stays cold. So these dark and kind of dark beers do really well for us when folks are in their hibernating stage. So in the last few years, we've only been open about 3 now. Typically I slide in dark mild in the fall, and then that lasts me into the spring as a single batch. But this past year I mentioned we changed up some things as far as our glassware, our service style, and I was blowing a firkin of cask in a weekend in December, which is traditionally not a great beer drinking time in North Carolina.
Sure.
So we have brewed 2 batches of mild so far in the last calendar year. I'm hoping to add a 3rd, because this is really, we noticed that it sold well because we spent the time talking about it and putting it in front of people. And this is a style that I really want to make our name on. I love to drink it. I don't have shift beers a lot when I work, because I have a lot to do. And unfortunately, drinking beer doesn't help my productivity these days. But 1.4% pint goes down real easy, and then I can still do all the stuff I got to do when I get home.
Yep.
So this is a style that we plan on leaning into for this year. I want to keep it, in cans all the time. I want to keep it on draft all the time. I want to keep casks of it available for specialties. I want to start putting it on nitro. I want to put it in front of our guests, and I want to try and create an identity for Eno River Brewing besides this beer, because I want people to associate that with us. And to your further question about just more English styles, we tend to do a decent amount of those. We always have something on nitro. We typically call it a pub ale, whether it's a bitter or a special bitter or a strong bitter or really a mild, but we don't call it that. We call it a pale ale, so it'll sell better. So we keep traditional porters, traditional browns, through the colder seasons. And we'll see how that goes in the warmer months. It gets hot as hell in North Carolina. So pale yellow beer and fruit beer is kind of my favorite thing when it gets hot, but we're going to see how mild sells. I think traditionally we brew our dry Irish stout in July-ish. That's a prop batch for the yeast I like to use for imperial stouts that we release in the winter. And it always helps those handful of people who only want to drink dark beer, no matter what season it is, and bringing out a good crushable, black beer in July tends to like scratch that itch for everybody and sells really well.
Sure.
So yeah, sorry if I just rambled there for a little
You're
while.
good. Kyle, how about you guys? Like, do you guys make mini milds? Make it often? And if you're not making mild, are you serving on cask? How often do you have cask running?
Yeah, we are leaning harder into the cask right now. So, like, in the winter times, we're going through a pan. We have it like every other weekend, and the way that we've kind of structured Habitude, or more or less just like this label for these cans, is it's our like rotating like English style beer. So it's like easier for us to like do some different styles. We have a little higher ABV, 6% London style brown porter. We have a summer ale, which we usually do like more in the summertime, obviously. Habitude has been one that we're trying to do more, but also similarly, it's like 2 to maybe, if we're lucky, 3 or 4 times a year, doing also similarly 7-barrel batches of it. Hopefully going to start doing some larger batches and push some more firkins in the tap room in the summertime, and just trying to lean into it a little bit more. But Habitude has been the one that we probably brew the most as far as any of our English beers. We've done a few iterations of other stuff, but
That's cool. Zach, you already told me you guys make mild once or twice a year. So I'm going to throw you a different one, and I'm going to tailor it towards your region of the world. Do you remember Pretty Things?
Yep.
So Pretty Things, I have a distinct moment. Pretty Things used to make a series called Once Upon a Time. I don't even recall that series, where they would go find historical brewing records. And for those listening that don't recall or are unfamiliar, Pretty Things was a brewing project that came out of New England, specifically, I believe, Massachusetts, about 10 or so years ago, maybe 15, where they were making a lot of historical styles and like Belgian-influenced beers. But there was also the series called Once Upon a Time, and I was really inspired by this. I'm curious if you experienced this or if you feel like there's opportunity for this. Then Once Upon a Time series, they would say like, okay, here's the historical brewing record for this beer on this date, and they would rebrew, let's say, and I actually, memory of mine was a mild that was like from 1892, and the same brand name and the same brewery version of that mild in 1943. And the difference was color, 4% ABV, like where it went from like one of them was 7.5% and blonde, the 1892 version, and the 1943 version, also called the same brand name, was dark and low ABV, like sub 4%. So my question for you is, in that world, do you feel like we can create mechanisms like that as breweries and marketing to be able to help people find their way into this space and go on that journey of understanding like beer's history? And have you guys thought about doing anything like that at Mass Landing?
Yeah, I think 100%, Blake. That's a great question. I think Alex mentioned earlier, Alex and Kyle, both beer education. I think for me, when it comes to marketing, is really storytelling, man. When you can tie in like history and experience and human relation to the beers you drink, it's gonna be relayed to your consumers, to your customers. That's one of the things I love most about just pouring beers out here, or talking to people who have traveled, or even me and you hanging out and talking. It's like when you've been somewhere and had that experience and had that beer, you bring that back and you want to replicate that here in the States. And being at Schilling, we did that a lot with lager. Not so much English dark or even English styles, but I think we've seen a huge shift with Czech dark lager that's become increasingly popular. And I think we've touched on this a number of times, cask engines, Lukers. I think seeing the Czech dark poured from Luker, like almost everybody is doing that now. I think this is next, and I think we're watching some of the pioneers in the craft beer game now, like honing in on those cask beer programs, diversifying their sessionable beer offerings. And I think we're going to see a lot more of this beer come into play. But I feel like I deviated from your question a little bit.
It's like nitro, those nitro Lukers for dark mild seems to be like a match made in heaven.
Like I said, I think it's just storytelling and being able to market to the American market or being able to have that marketing for the American beer drinker, and being like, hey, this is why we make these styles. This is why we drink these styles. This is something cool and different and appealing in another way. like give it a try, and I think it's gonna catch on in a major way.
So that's a good tee up to how I want to wrap this up, and I'm going to start with you, Kyle. Fast forward 10 years, where do we think the style sits? Is it still a niche curiosity, or do you think we've, by 10 years from now, experienced a genuine revival in the mild?
God, I hope so. I mean, 10 years, let's see. I feel like it's going to have a resurgence. And as these guys have both said, that it is like coming more at the forefront. And, you know, different styles and trends come and go. So 10 years, like, will it already have had its time? I hope not, but yeah.
I mean, it's been around 150 or so years, so who knows? Yeah.
Reason for that.
Zach, what do you think? You think we got legs in front of us, or do you think it's gonna kind of stay where it sits?
I think we do have a lot of room in front of it. I think for beer drinkers, I think sessionability will be a huge play, even in 10 years, and I think also just like authenticity of styles. I think beer drinkers and even consumers in general, through generations, are getting more in tune with traditionalism and being like, hey, this is why they created these beers in England. This is why they've been drinking it for 140 years, and we're actually replicating that exact production and that exact serving style to bring it to the U.S. I think we're going to see that not only with English styles, but with many styles. And I think consumers will seek out quality, and not only quality from a beer perspective, but also from a serving and tapster perspective. And when you're authentic and deliver that genuinely, I think it's going to shine. I think we're going to see a lot more of that in 10 years, where styles weed themselves out. People get more intentional and direct with the styles of beer they're making and how they present that. And I think mild will definitely be a part of that. Also,
Alex?
hey, Blake, one more thing. I just want to say I've had Inner Conflict and Habitude, both phenomenal. Shout out Alex and Kyle.
Yeah, for sure. Woo-woo. A lot of good milds here today.
Really good beer.
Alex, what do you think? Where does mild sit in 10 years?
I think, you know, if we look back to where these styles came from in England, and I think Zach mentioned very briefly, like, English drinking culture, you know, the UK, Great Britain, England, however you want to call, like, that conglomeration of, like, countries, not that they're all the same, but they have a pub culture throughout all of those various countries that is people going in to regularly drink beer that is low ABV. I mean, like, it's not weird to see a 2% ABV beer in like a Nonic style pint over, you know, across the pond. I think if you tried to give a 2% pint to an American craft beer drinker, they'd be pretty upset with you. So I think there is a tension in American craft beer towards lower ABV beers, again, because we're all getting older. We all still like getting out of the house. People still love craft beer, you know, whether they are diehard craft drinkers or they want a bar that they can take their dog and their kids to. Like, we seem to be filling a third space for a large portion of our community, whether or not they're diehard craft beer drinkers or if they're just like looking to get out on a sunny Saturday afternoon. And the United States is just absolutely massive, and drinking culture is incredibly nuanced, to the point where, like, in North Carolina, we know how our tap room is going to look dependent on the weather before we even start to look at what's going on. And I see you nodding, Blake.
Yeah, we track weather to tap room performance for sure.
100%.
Go Dogs.
Oh yeah.
And you know, if you go up to Milwaukee or Chicago, it doesn't matter how terrible it is outside. People are going to be elbows up on the bar, because if you didn't leave your house or your apartment when it was crappy outside, you'd never leave. So I think the determinants of like any beer style or any craft beer trend really depends on us as producers, because we get to dictate what we make, right? And we get to dictate how we sell it to people, how we package it, how we show it. And there are a lot of really amazing breweries who put a stake in the sand and say, oh, we're only going to make decocted lagers. We're only going to make mixed culture beers. And I think there's room for a lot of those like hyper-specific, hyper-focused breweries. But I think all of us, you know, whether or not you're 150,000 barrels a year in 50 states, or if you're a couple hundred barrels out of your own bar, I think we all have the ability to make the beers that we want to see in the world and to educate our staff on how to make that appeal to our guests and to educate our guests on like a new experience outside of their realm. So I think as long as we are continuing to bring intentionality to everything that we do, I mean, I think any brand, any style, any ingredient has longevity as long as we're paying attention to it. But there's a lot of really shiny things in beer. So
I do think you're right. I think the craft consumer feels the palpability of our intention, our passion, and that's what draws a lot of them to understanding what we believe in, because they see how excited we, as the people behind it, get excited about it. And they're like, wow, there's something there. I don't know what it is, but I want to know more about it. And please help me understand why you believe in this so much. I think you're absolutely right.
Yeah, they really trust us as the arbiters of craft and content. And, you know, they come to our spaces because they like what we do. So, I mean,
Well, guys, I did not have talking for an hour about mild on my 2026 bingo card, but here
Free
we
space.
are. Yeah, this is great. It's really been a pleasure. Real quick, let's just tell everybody how they can find more information about your brewery. Kyle, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, all the regular socials, www.waywardlanebrewing.com. We are also hosting Log Jammin' this year, so that's going to be a large... our first festival, passing the torch from Human Robot. We're very, very honored to be able to continue that. But yeah, Wayward Lane Brewing.
There you go. Zach?
At Mass Landing.
Boom.
No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, we're same thing Kyle said. We'll also be at Log Jammin'. Super pumped for that. It'll be my first trip out to Wayward, so I'm beyond stoked. But yeah, follow us at Mass. We do Wavy Days. That's our festival in the summer, end of June. Little beautiful venue on the water in Portland.
Summer in Maine is so much better than summer in Georgia.
We got a couple lagers and lobster rolls lined up. So
let's go.
I'm excited, man. But yeah,
hell yeah.
Mass Landing is what we do, and you can follow us all across the board.
Yeah, and Alex?
Yeah, we're Eno River Brewing on Instagram. I guess we're on Facebook too, but we mostly cross-post from Instagram. That's where we have the most activity. Hopefully I'll be at Log Jammin' this year.
Make something work.
Nice.
You're invited.
And I'll personally be at CBC, so I'll be at Forest in Maine hopefully every single day.
Yeah.
I don't think that's going to happen, but
It's not
You
easy
gotta-
to
you
get
gotta
a
hit
girl
Robot.
can dream, but it's
Yeah.
good.
Alex, you got to hit Robot too.
a
Couple milk tubes.
Oh, I'm no stranger to milk tube.
Well, guys, it's been a lot of fun. Thank you for being on the panel. I'm Blake Tyers from Creature Comforts Brewing Company, and we are talking on All About Beer podcast here at Little Beer 2026. Hope everybody drinks some milds and keep those hand pumps cranking. Cheers, guys.
Thanks, Blake.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Thanks, Blake.
Cheers to mild.
Cheers to mild.
My thanks to Blake and his panel. My thanks, of course, to Todd DiMatteo and the folks at Goodword Brewing for hosting All About Beer during Little Beer. He set the date for Little Beer 7 on April 17th, 2027. I suggest putting it on your calendar and planning to be there. I'm not going to miss it next year. Next week, it's back to our usual format. In the meantime, you can reach me via email anytime at johnhall@allaboutbeer.com. That's JOHNHOLL @allaboutbeer.com. Make sure you join the This Week in Rauch Beer group on Facebook. Follow TW Rauch Beer on Instagram, at TW Rauch Beer on Instagram. Upload your photos. Join the smoky conversation. Support us by visiting allaboutbeer.com/support. Please do. Please do. And when you're at the website, you can read our new articles as well as the archives, and you can find all of the links to follow All About Beer on social media. For smart audio content, All About Beer has a separate podcast channel. It's separate from this. So just search All About Beer on your podcast platform of choice. And there you can listen to shows like Brewer to Brewer, One Iconic Beer, and the All About Beer podcast with M. Satter and Don Tess. Steal This Beer has new episodes every Monday. The BYO Nano podcast comes out on the 15th of every month. As for this show, Nate Schweber, he does the music. Jeff Quinn designed our logo. And I'm John Hall. New episodes release every Wednesday, and that's when I'll be back again to drink beer and to think beer.